Hello and welcome back. We're carrying on going through the opening chapters of Genesis and just looking at what they have to say about how God made the world to function, why things are as they are and how we respond to that and why we respond as we do. And we've come to a really interesting bit actually right at the beginning of Genesis chapter 2. I'm just going to read the opening 3 verses, and it says, "So the creation of the heavens and the earth and everything in them was completed. On the seventh day, God had finished from his work of creation, so he rested from all his work. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because it was the day when he rested from all his work of creation." Sabbath, rest, something we kind of have probably mixed feelings towards. I wonder what your default is if you're told that you've got a day of doing absolutely nothing. And probably for some of us, we love the concept of that. And for some of us, it freaks us out slightly because we need to feel we're doing something purposeful. We need to feel there's something that we've got to show for our day at the end of it. And maybe too, it depends on times and seasons and all those kind of things. And that's significant too, because if you read through Genesis 1, if you go through the story of creation here that we've been doing, there is a rhythm. There was evening, there was morning the first day, there was evening, there was morning the second day, there was evening, there was morning the third day. Things happen, there's a break, it's a new day. There's a rhythm, and the chapter's written in a rhythmic way until you come to this, and the rhythm breaks and it's something totally different because it's completed. And on the seventh day, God finished. The seventh day doesn't have an ending here. It just happens that God rests. And the rhythm is different. The word Sabbath, the Jewish word Shabbat, Hebrew word Shabbat, which our word Sabbath comes from, just means stop, cease. Now, it's been abused a little bit over the years. Even in Jesus' day, he was constantly on at the Pharisees about how they misused the Sabbath and made it an excuse for rules and regulations. And maybe some of us grew up in a culture which Sunday, being the Sabbath, though there's no obvious reason why it should be, had those rules and regulations attached to it. You weren't allowed to buy a paper, you weren't allowed to watch the television or whatever it might have happened to be. And maybe for others that's totally foreign. But there is immense wisdom. In fact, the fact that it's here in Genesis suggests it's written into the very way creation is meant to work, that we need a day, at least, when we stop. That the rhythm that we go through in our normal everyday lives needs to change and be completely different, because day 7 here is completely different. And God blesses that and says it's holy. It's a completely different rhythm. And we all need times. Let's leave aside the need for worship and all those kind of spiritual things. We need a rhythm in our lives that includes time to stop. That includes time when nothing apparently happens. When it's not about what we're achieving or producing or doing. You see, one of the things about taking Sabbath, about stopping what we're doing, is it's an act of faith. It's an act of saying, we're not in control, that my activity isn't the most fundamental thing that makes the world function as it should do, but rather God and his activity is what makes the world be as it should be. It's really interesting, actually. I don't know if you've ever noticed that in this account of creation, all through Genesis 1, and this is a traditional Jewish understanding of the day starts in the evening. So there was evening, there was morning the first day, and so on as you go through the chapter. Now for us, the day starts in the morning. In Jewish culture, the day starts in the evening. That means the first thing you do probably is eat and then you sleep. Now that's quite a challenging way of looking at the world, because our day starts with eating and then our activity, the thing that makes the world go round. Actually, in this more biblical view of life, the first thing we do is rest. Now, there's a biblical theology of sleep, I think, that needs to be written. But actually sleep is so fundamental, and so many of the studies of modern science, the findings are showing how beneficial and how important sleep is to us, to our health, to our well-being. In so many areas, it makes a huge difference. And the ability to sleep comes partly, again, from this place of trust, of recognizing that I'm not in control, but that's okay. So many of the sleepless nights I've had have been when my sense of control of the world has been under threat. And maybe that's a challenge, that actually we need to learn to trust God and be out of control. That actually when things aren't under our control, they're still under His. And in that, we rest. And that, I think, is one of the fundamental principles behind Sabbath. That actually there's a rhythm of rest because we know that God is still in control. God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy because it was the day when He rested from all His work of creation. If you ever thought about what the pinnacle, the summit, the high point of God's creation here is, usually we say, oh, the high point is God's creation of people, of human beings. We looked at that in the last video. But actually that's not strictly true. The summit, the high point of God's work in creation in the first chapters of Genesis is day 7, when He does nothing. That's a new way of looking at the world, isn't it? That actually the summit is this day of rest, this day of non-activity, of non-busyness. There's so much more to be said about this. And again, it's a common theme in modern writing, really, actually Christian writing too. Our culture has been so swamped with hurry, rush, busyness. So many of us, without realising it, get our identity from being busy. First thing you ask someone when you meet someone new is, what do you do? Actually, who are you is a far more fundamental question. And we find out who we are when we learn how to rest, to know that Sabbath is a good thing, that rest, that stopping is a good thing. And I'm speaking to myself here, that God is in control and the world doesn't depend on my activity. How we do that will probably in modern society vary from individual to individual. But the principle for me is clear. We need to find a rhythm of life that includes stopping, that includes resting. It's written in to the way God made the world. So enjoy the rhythm, enjoy the different rhythms maybe that there've been as we've been in lockdown and then coming out of lockdown. That perhaps in itself has been an enforced rest for some of us. But let's, as we rebuild, let's build rhythms of work and rhythms of rest into our lives, because that's how God has designed the world to be. Amen.